the billionaire noticed something strange. While everyone panicked during the robbery, the waitress stood calm, fearless. What happened next revealed she was no ordinary woman. Before we continue, I have to be straightforward. If you do not subscribe now, this might be the last time you see our content. The digital world can separate us unless you follow, comment, and share this story. Do not miss the chance to be part of our growing family. Now let us delve into tonight's narrative. Jake Cook adjusted his navy-tailored suit as he surveyed the open veranda of the Evergreen Pavilion, an exclusive country resort restaurant he had chosen for a rare moment of solitude. His latest multi-billion-dollar tech investment deal had closed earlier that day. At 34, he had built a venture capital empire funding cutting-edge AI and defense startups. Tonight's quiet dinner was just another brief escape from boardroom battles and endless notifications. The veranda glowed with soft lantern light, polished wood tables reflecting the flicker of candles amid the subtle strains of live violins. The air carried the faint scent of blooming jasmine from the surrounding gardens, mingling with aromas of seared meats and fresh herbs from the kitchen. Wealthy patrons conversed in low tones, their laughter occasional and restrained, as if the elegance of the place demanded a certain decorum. Crystal glasses clinked softly, and the distant hum of a fountain provided a soothing undercurrent to the evening. Jake settled into a corner booth, the leather seat cool against his back. He appreciated places like this, where anonymity could still be purchased with discretion rather than fanfare. No paparazzi lingered at the gates of the Evergreen Pavilion. No social media influencers angled for selfies with the elite. It was a sanctuary for those who could afford it, nestled in the rolling hills far from the city's relentless pulse. He exhaled slowly, allowing the tension from the day's negotiations to ebb away. The deal had been grueling, a high-stakes merger between two rival AI firms that promised to revolutionize autonomous defense systems. Success meant billions in potential returns, but it also meant more eyes on him, more demands, more isolation in a crowd. His gaze wandered across the veranda, a habit born from years of assessing risks and opportunities. Jake had always noticed details others missed. It was what made him successful in business. A slight hesitation in a founder's pitch could signal overvaluation. A flicker in market data might foreshadow a downturn. Here, amid the opulence, he scanned for imperfections out of instinct. The violins played a melancholic piece, the bow strokes precise. Servers glided between tables with trays balanced effortlessly. Everything appeared impeccable. Then his attention locked onto a young woman moving between the tables with an unusual precision. Unlike the other servers who bustled with practiced deference, this one carried herself with quiet detachment. Her shoulder-length auburn hair was tied back neatly in a low ponytail, revealing sharp green eyes that scanned without seeming to stare. A faint scar traced along her jawline, subtle but unmistakable, like a story etched in skin. She wore the standard uniform, a crisp white blouse and black skirt, but it fit her as if tailored for efficiency rather than display. Her movements were graceful yet economical, each step placed with purpose, avoiding the subtle chaos of spilled crumbs or misplaced napkins. Olive had noticed the solitary man in the corner booth the moment he arrived without fanfare. She had worked at the Evergreen Pavilion for 3 years, long enough to spot when a high-profile guest sought anonymity over spectacle. The other staff whispered about Jake Cook's reputation for ruthless deal-making and his knack for spotting weaknesses in any system. But Olive had endured far worse than discerning billionaires. She had learned long ago that blending in required focus, not fear, and that true invisibility came from mastering the chaos around you. She approached his table with a water pitcher, refilling his glass before he requested it. Jake watched her closely now, his curiosity piqued. There was something unreadable in her demeanor, detached yet attentive. Most servers here fluttered with subtle eagerness, hoping for a generous tip or a nod of approval from someone of his stature. This one did not. Her eyes met his briefly, acknowledging his presence without invitation. "Excuse me," Jake's voice cut through her rhythm as she set down a fresh bread basket. "You serve that table like you have orchestrated 100 crises, but you do not move like someone who has poured wine her whole life. Olive paused, meeting his analytical gaze with unflinching composure. I have been here long enough to handle most situations, Mr. Cook. What can I get for you this evening? Her voice was steady, with a faint accent that hinted at places far from these manicured grounds, perhaps Eastern European, though softened by years in service. She did not smile excessively, did not fidget. Jake leaned back, intrigued. The filet mignon, medium rare, with asparagus and the roasted potatoes. And a glass of the 2015 Cabernet from Napa. She nodded once, jotting nothing down but committing it to memory. Excellent choice. It will be out shortly. With that, she turned and glided away, her posture unchanged. Jake watched her go, his mind turning over the interaction. In his world, people either sought his favor or feared his scrutiny. This woman did neither. She maintained professional distance, yet there was an undercurrent of awareness, as if she had catalogued him the way he had her. He sipped his water, the cool liquid grounding him. The evening was mild, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves overhead. Other guests arrived in pairs or small groups, their attire screaming old money or new tech wealth. A couple at the next table discussed stock portfolios in hushed excitement. A family celebrated a milestone birthday with restrained toasts. As the violins shifted to a lighter melody, Jake's thoughts drifted to his recent deal. The merger had required months of due diligence, uncovering hidden liabilities in one company's code that could have tanked the valuation. He had spotted the anomaly in a late-night review, a pattern in the data that others overlooked. It was exhausting, this constant vigilance, but it was also his edge. Tonight he craved respite from it all. No emails, no calls. Just a meal and the illusion of normalcy. Olive returned sooner than expected, balancing a tray with practiced ease. She set down the plate with precision, the steak sliced open to reveal a perfect pink center, asparagus arranged in a neat fan, potatoes golden and crisp. Steam rose gently, carrying the rich scent of garlic and butter. Enjoy your meal, sir. Please let me know if you need anything else. Thank you, Jake replied, noting how she avoided lingering. Most would ask if everything was to his liking, fishing for conversation. She simply stepped back, her green eyes scanning the veranda once more before moving on. He cut into the steak, the knife gliding effortlessly. The flavor was impeccable, tender and seasoned just right. As he ate, he observed the room again. The lanterns cast warm shadows, the candlelight dancing on crystal stemware. A waiter poured wine for a nearby table, describing the vintage with enthusiastic detail. The atmosphere was one of peaceful indulgence, the kind that made the outside world feel distant. Yet Jake could not shake his fascination with the waitress. Olive, her name tag read. She served another table now, a group of executives laughing over shared appetizers. Her responses were concise, her smile polite but not warm. When a child at the table dropped a fork, she retrieved a replacement without missing a beat. There was efficiency in her actions, but something more, a readiness that spoke of training beyond restaurant protocols. Olive felt his gaze occasionally, but she did not react. She had noticed Jake studying her from the start, his eyes sharp like those of the operatives she once knew. In her previous life, before the Evergreen Pavilion, vigilance had been survival. Now it was habit. She cleared a table nearby, stacking plates with silent precision. The scar on her jaw itched faintly in the warm air, a reminder of a night in a dusty alley far away. She pushed the memory aside. Here she was just Olive, the composed server who never spilled a drop. The evening progressed smoothly. More guests filled the veranda, the violins playing a waltz that encouraged subtle swaying in seats. Jake finished his steak, savoring the last bites. He signaled for the check, but Olive was already approaching with the leather folder. "Whenever you are ready, Mr. Cook." He glanced at the bill, adding a generous tip without comment. "You have been excellent. What is your name again?" "Olive," she said, her tone neutral. "Olive. Unusual name for someone so unflappable. She tilted her head slightly. It suits me. Have a good evening. As she walked away, Jake pocketed his card, his mind still turning. The deal's success lingered in his thoughts, a mix of triumph and weariness. He had built his empire by trusting his instincts, and something about Olive triggered them. Not threat exactly, but anomaly. In a place of calculated perfection, she was the variable. The peaceful evening continued, wealthy guests enjoying their meals under the lantern glow. Soft music filled the air, conversations a gentle murmur. Jake leaned back, considering a dessert menu, but decided against it. The night felt complete, a rare pause in his driven life. Then, subtly at first, Olive's posture shifted. She was near the entrance now, refilling a carafe. Her head turned fractionally toward the main doors, her body tensing in a way that was almost imperceptible. Jake noticed it immediately, his observation skills kicking in. A distant sound reached his ears, unusual for the serene setting, perhaps a vehicle's engine revving too aggressively on the approach road. Movement near the entrance caught his eye, shadows shifting where none should be. The violins played on, oblivious. Guests chatted, forks clinking against plates. But Olive's eyes narrowed, her hand pausing mid-motion. Jake sat up straighter, a prickle of unease creeping in. What had she seen? What did she know that he did not? Then came the crash. The crash shattered the evening's fragile peace like thunder ripping through a clear sky. Glass doors at the entrance exploded inward, shards scattering across the polished wood floor as three masked men burst onto the veranda, their black ski masks concealing all but their wild eyes. Each gripped a handgun, barrels glinting under the lantern light, and they fanned out with practiced menace, one shouting orders while the other swept the room for threats. Panic erupted instantly. Guests screamed, high-pitched wails cutting through the air as chairs toppled and dishes shattered against the ground. A violinist in the corner dropped his instrument mid-note, the bow clattering away as he dove behind a potted plant. The soft strains of music died abruptly, replaced by chaos. Women clutched their pearls and cried out, pulling at their companions' arms in desperate bids to flee. Men, some still holding forks mid-bite, dove under tables, knocking over crystal glasses that spilled red wine like blood across white tablecloths. The air filled with the acrid scent of fear, mingled with the lingering aromas of gourmet meals now forgotten. Security guards, two burly men stationed near the doors, froze in place, their hands hovering uncertainly over holsters, eyes wide with shock as the robbers barked commands to stay down. Jake's heart slammed against his ribs, an adrenaline spike flooding his system like ice water. His instincts screamed to hide, to drop low and assess, drawing from years of high-stakes negotiations where split-second decisions meant survival in boardrooms. But this was no merger. This was raw, visceral danger. He gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles whitening, mind racing through escape routes. The veranda's open sides offered paths to the gardens, but the robbers blocked the main exit. He glanced around, calculating odds, his breath shallow and quick. In stark contrast, Olive did not flinch. She remained standing near the entrance where she had been refilling a carafe, her body still as a statue amid the storm. Her green eyes swept the scene with cold precision, assessing the intruders' positions, their grips on weapons, the way they moved. No scream escaped her lips, no tremor shook her frame. While others crumbled, she stood tall, her low ponytail undisturbed, her uniform crisp as if the world had not just tilted into madness. Everyone down. Wallets, watches, jewelry on the tables now. The lead robber bellowed, his voice muffled but authoritative through the mask. He waved his pistol wildly, pointing it at clusters of cowering guests. Move slow or we start shooting. You rich bastards think you're untouchable. Not tonight. His accomplices echoed the threats, one kicking over a chair for emphasis, another grabbing a woman's diamond necklace and yanking it free with a snarl. Hurry up. We ain't got all night. Anyone plays hero, they get a bullet. Olive began to move then, not toward safety but with deliberate calm across the veranda, weaving through the debris like a shadow. She headed straight for Jake's corner booth, her steps measured, avoiding the gaze of the robbers without appearing to evade. Jake watched her approach, his confusion mounting. Why was she not hiding? Why risk drawing attention? As she neared, she leaned in slightly, her voice a whisper that cut through the din like a blade. Do not move. Do not make eye contact. When I say down, drop immediately. Jake blinked, his mind reeling. The words carried an authority that brooked no argument, a tone honed from experiences he could not fathom. Confusion warred with an inexplicable trust. Something in her unflinching gaze, the steadiness of her whisper, commanded obedience. He nodded faintly, his pulse thundering in his ears, as she straightened and continued her path as if nothing had changed. The robbers circulated now, aggressive and shouting, their boots crunching over broken glass. One snatched a Rolex from a trembling man's wrist, cursing under his breath. Another rifled through a purse, pocketing cash and cards with gloved hands. Keep your heads down. Eyes on the floor, they yelled, waving weapons to enforce compliance. The veranda, once a haven of elegance, had transformed into a battlefield of terror, the lanterns casting eerie shadows that danced like specters over the huddled forms. Amid the frenzy, one guest, a burly executive at a nearby table, decided to resist. He surged up from his crouch, face red with defiance, grabbing at the arm of the nearest robber. "You won't get away with this," he growled, his voice thick with bravado. The robber spun, pistol whipping him across the temple with a sickening crack. Blood sprayed across the tablecloth, the man crumpling to the ground with a groan. Screams intensified, a wave of fresh horror rippling through the crowd. Women sobbed louder, children buried their faces in parents' laps, and even the security guards hesitated further, one whispering into a radio for help that seemed impossibly distant. Yet Olive continued as if serving a routine shift. She bent to pick up a piece of fallen silverware from the floor, her movements fluid and unhurried, placing it neatly on an empty tray. Then she righted an overturned water glass at an abandoned table, wiping a spill with a napkin from her apron. Her impossible composure stood out like a beacon in the storm. The other servers cowered behind the bar or under tables, their faces pale and tear-streaked, whispering prayers or frozen in silent dread. But Olive moved like nothing was wrong, her green eyes alert but her expression serene, as if the robbery were merely an inconvenient spill to clean. Jake watched her in disbelief from his booth, his body tense but obeying her instructions. Was she in shock, some dissociative state shielding her from reality? Or fearless, forged in fires he could not imagine? Something else entirely, perhaps, a puzzle that tugged at his analytical mind even as fear gripped him. He had built his fortune spotting anomalies in data, weaknesses in systems, but Olive was an enigma wrapped in calm. Her scar along the jawline seemed more pronounced now under the flickering lights, a mark of battles past. How could she navigate this chaos without a hitch in her step? The lead robber, a tall figure with a commanding presence, noticed her then. His head snapped toward Olive as she straightened another chair, his eyes narrowing behind the mask. The anomaly in the room drew him like a moth to flame. He strode over aggressively, pistol raised, his boots thudding against the wood. "What the hell are you doing, lady? Get down on the ground like everyone else," he snarled, his voice laced with suspicion and rage. Olive paused, her back to him for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. The veranda held its breath, the screams dying to whimpers as attention shifted. Jake's heart pounded harder, his instinct to intervene clashing with her earlier command. The robber reached out, shoving her shoulder roughly to spin her around, demanding her compliance with a shove that echoed in the sudden hush. She turned to face him slowly, her green eyes meeting his without a trace of fear. The air thickened with tension, the lanterns swinging gently overhead as if mocking the standoff. Jake held his breath, watching the scene unfold, his mind racing through possibilities. Olive's posture remained impeccable, her hands steady at her sides. The robber leaned in closer, his gun inches from her chest, repeating his demand with a growl. "I said get down. Or do you want to be the example?" But Olive did not kneel. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, assessing him as she had the room earlier. Whispers rippled among the guests, a mix of horror and awe. One of the other robbers paused in his looting, glancing over with uncertainty. The security guards exchanged looks, fingers twitching toward their weapons. The violinist peeked from his hiding spot, instrument forgotten on the ground. Jake's thoughts spiraled. Who was this woman? In his world of calculated risks, she was the wild card, the element that defied prediction. He recalled her whispered instructions, the authority in them, and wondered if this was the moment she had anticipated. His adrenaline surged anew, not just from fear but from the dawning realization that the night had layers he had not seen. The lead robber's patience frayed. He grabbed her arm, yanking her closer, his mask distorting his features into something monstrous. "You deaf. I won't ask again." Spittle rings, while the third barked orders at the security guards to stay put. The confusion provided flecked from his lips, visible even through the fabric. Olive's response was measured, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. But before she could speak, the scene hung in precarious balance, the veranda a powder keg waiting for a spark. Guests peered from under tables, their faces etched with dread. The distant siren of approaching help wailed faintly, too far to intervene yet. Olive's scar caught the light again, a silent testament to her resilience. In that frozen instant, Jake understood. This was no ordinary waitress. Her calm was not denial. It was control. As the robber's grip tightened, she shifted her weight subtly, her eyes never leaving his. The chapter of chaos had only begun, and Olive stood at its center, unyielding. The lead robber's grip tightened on Olive's arm like a vice, his gloved fingers digging into her sleeve as he yanked her closer. His breath came hot and ragged through the ski mask, eyes bulging with fury behind the slits. "You deaf bitch. I won't ask again," he snarled, the pistol in his other hand pressing against her side, close enough for her to feel the cold metal through her blouse. The veranda fell into a stunned hush, the scattered whimpers of guests amplifying the standoff. Jake tensed in his booth, every muscle coiled, his mind screaming to act but held back by her earlier whisper. The other two robbers paused in their looting, glancing over with predatory curiosity, bags half filled with watches and wallets. Olive did not resist the pull, but neither did she cower. In her free hand, she still balanced a small plate of uneaten appetizers from a nearby table, as if the interruption were merely a rude customer complaint. Her green eyes locked onto his, unblinking, dissecting him in that split second. The scar along her jawline caught a flicker from the lanterns, a silent badge of endurance. She tilted her head slightly, her voice emerging calm and even, slicing through his rage like a scalpel. "You're trembling. That safety's still on." The robber blinked, his momentum faltering. Confusion rippled across what little of his face was visible, his eyes darting to the gun in his hand. Was it? The hesitation was brief, a crack in his armor born of doubt, but it was all she needed. In one fluid motion, honed from years Olive kept buried, she twisted her captured arm inward, using his grip against him. Her elbow drove up sharply into his wrist joint, forcing his fingers to splay open with a pained grunt. The pistol clattered free, skidding across the wooden floor and vanishing under a nearby chair, barely noticed amid the lingering chaos of overturned furniture and shattered glass. The disarmed robber stumbled back, clutching his wrist, his mask twisting as he stared at her in disbelief. "What the?" he muttered, his voice cracking, the authority evaporating like mist. He glanced around wildly, searching for his weapon, but the shadows under the table swallowed it whole. The other robbers, distracted by a fresh wave of panicking guests who had begun scrambling toward the edges of the veranda at the sound of approaching sirens, did not see the exchange. One was busy stuffing a necklace into his bag, cursing at a woman who clung to her ear-perfect cover, the veranda a whirlwind of movement and noise. Olive wasted no time. She stepped back smoothly, her posture unchanged, the plate still balanced in her hand as if she might set it down for service. Her eyes flicked to Jake, then to a cluster of nearby guests huddled under tables, their faces pale and streaked with tears. "This way," she said softly, her tone commanding yet reassuring, gesturing toward the kitchen exit at the far end of the veranda. It was a tactical choice, hidden from the main entrance and shielded by a row of decorative screens. She moved with purpose, helping an elderly woman to her feet and guiding a young couple who clutched each other in terror. "Stay low, move quietly. Use the confusion." Jake followed her lead, rising from his booth with cautious speed, his heart still pounding but his mind sharpening. He marveled at her tactical thinking, how she positioned people in a loose line, using overturned chairs and spilled debris as natural barriers. A child whimpered, and Olive knelt briefly to whisper encouragement, her hand steady on the boy's shoulder. "Almost there," she murmured, her voice an anchor in the storm. Jake assisted a man who had twisted his ankle in the initial panic, supporting him as they edged toward the kitchen doors. The sirens grew louder now, a wail piercing the night from the resort's winding drive, likely triggered by a silent alarm from one of the staff or a quick-thinking guest. The robbers sensed the shift, their heads snapping toward the sound. "Cops! Time's up!" the lead one shouted, his voice laced with panic now that his weapon was gone. He rubbed his wrist, shooting a venomous glare at Olive but not daring to pursue. The trio abandoned their half-hearted looting, grabbing what they could, a handful of wallets, a few glittering rings, and bolted toward the veranda's open side, leaping over the low railing into the darkened gardens. Their footsteps faded into the night, swallowed by the rustling foliage and the approaching wail of sirens. The veranda exhaled collectively, the tension breaking like a wave as guests began to emerge from hiding, sobs and relieved murmurs filling the air. Police arrived moments later, tires screeching on the gravel outside as squad cars pulled up. Uniformed officers poured onto the scene, weapons drawn but lowered as they assessed the empty threat. "Everyone stay calm. We're securing the area," a sergeant called out, his team fanning across the veranda to check for injuries and lingering dangers. Flashlights swept the floor, illuminating the debris. Broken crystal, scattered jewelry, a violin bow snapped in two. Paramedics followed close behind, wheeling stretchers and kits, tending to the pistol-whipped executive whose head wound bled steadily. They cleaned and bandaged him on site, his wife hovering anxiously as they checked for concussion. Other guests nursed minor cuts from glass or bruises from dives under tables, the medics moving efficiently amid the general aftermath chaos of statements and reassurances. Olive lingered near the kitchen doors, ensuring the last of her guided group made it inside before stepping back into the fray. An officer approached her for a statement, notebook in hand. "Ma'am, can you walk me through what happened?" he asked, his tone professional but edged with the adrenaline of the response. She nodded, her voice steady as she recounted the basics. The crash, the demands, the flight. She downplayed her actions entirely, mentioning only that she had helped direct people to safety. "It was all so fast," she said, her green eyes distant, as if recalling a minor spill rather than a disarmament. "I just tried to keep everyone calm." The officer jotted notes, glancing up occasionally, but she offered no more, her composure a wall he could not breach. Jake gave his own statement nearby, describing the entry, the threats, the panic. But his eyes kept drifting to Olive, his mind racing with questions. Who was she? How had she known the safety was on? The twist of the wrist, it was no lucky flail. It was precise, trained. He watched as she moved away from the officer, her ponytail swinging slightly, and began clearing tables with quiet efficiency. She righted a chair here, stacked plates there, as if resuming a normal shift interrupted by a brief rain shower. The lanterns still glowed softly, casting a surreal normalcy over the scene. As the police wrapped up initial interviews and guests began filtering out, Jake approached her before heading to his car. The veranda smelled of spilled wine and cordite now, the violins silent. "That was remarkable," he said, his voice low, genuine admiration cutting through his usual reserve. "How did you do that?" "The way you handled him." Olive paused in stacking napkins, meeting his gaze with polite deflection. "Just lucky, sir. Glad everyone's safe." She offered a small nod, her scar faint in the dimming light, and turned back to her task, effectively closing the conversation. Jake lingered for a moment, but she did not engage further. He nodded in return, slipping his hands into his pockets as he walked toward the exit. The night air cooled his skin as he stepped off the veranda, the gardens whispering with wind. Police lights flashed blue and red across the resort's facade, casting long shadows. His driver waited by the sleek black sedan, engine idling. "Rough night, Mr. Cook?" the man asked, opening the door. "You have no idea," Jake replied, sliding into the leather seat. As the car pulled away, gravel crunching under tires, he stared out the window at the receding lights of the Evergreen Pavilion. The deal from earlier that day felt trivial now, a footnote in a life of calculations. His mind replayed the scene. Olive's calm whisper, the robber's hesitation, the swift disarm. She was no ordinary waitress, that much was clear. A scar like hers did not come from kitchen mishaps. And her movements, they spoke of discipline, perhaps military, perhaps something darker. He pulled out his phone, the screen glowing in the dim interior. No notifications for once, but his thoughts buzzed. Who was Olive? A quick search might yield nothing, but his network ran deep. Contacts in security firms, old friends in intelligence circles from his defense startup days. He could learn more. The car accelerated onto the highway, the resort fading in the rearview. Jake leaned back, a decision crystallizing. He would dig into this mysterious waitress, uncover the layers she hid so well. Tonight had been no coincidence. It was a revelation. And in his world, revelations were opportunities. The drive stretched on, city lights approaching on the horizon. Jake's exhaustion from the day's deal mingled with a new energy, a puzzle to solve. Olive's face lingered in his mind, her green eyes unflinching. What stories did that scar hold? What crises had forged her? Composure. He smiled faintly, the first real one of the evening. The quiet before the storm had passed, but a new one brewed in his curiosity. Back at the pavilion, Olive finished clearing the last table, the police wrapping up their perimeter check. She wiped her hands on her apron, surveying the restored order. Guests had departed, statements taken, the injured transported. The night staff murmured thanks as they reset for tomorrow, but she waved them off. Just another shift, she told herself, pushing down the adrenaline's aftertaste. But as she clocked out, slipping into the employee lot, she felt a prickle. The billionaire's gaze had lingered too long. Questions would come, she knew. Her past was a shadow, best left undisturbed. Jake arrived at his penthouse later, the city sprawl glittering below. He poured a scotch, neat, and sat at his desk, laptop open. A simple search first. The Evergreen Pavilion staff. Nothing on Olive. Deeper then. He texted a contact. Need background on a waitress at Evergreen. Name, Olive. Description follows. The reply came quick, on it. As he waited, he replayed her words. You're trembling. Observant, precise. The safety, a bluff? Or keen eyes? He sipped his drink, the burn grounding him. This was no fleeting interest. It was instinct, the same that built his empire. Olive was a variable, and he would solve her equation. The night deepened, but sleep evaded him. Instead he paced mind-weaving scenarios. Military vet. Undercover. The disarm was textbook, efficient. He recalled her guidance to the kitchen, tactical and calm. Lives saved, perhaps, in those moments. His phone buzzed. Preliminary hit. Olive Grant, 28. Clean record but gaps. More tomorrow. Jake set the phone down, staring into the darkness. Gaps meant stories, and he intended to fill them. Days blurred into a haze of board meetings and strategy sessions for Jake, the robbery at the Evergreen Pavilion lingering like a shadow in his mind. Back in his penthouse that night, the preliminary report from his contact had been tantalizingly sparse. Olive Grant, 28, with a clean record but conspicuous gaps in her history. No family ties listed, no education beyond a generic community college degree, and her address a modest apartment in a quiet suburb. It was enough to fuel his curiosity, but not satisfy it. He had instructed further digging, then tried to sleep, only to wake with her image etched in his thoughts, those green eyes unflinching amid chaos. Several days later, Jake sat in his corporate office on the top floor of Cook Ventures Tower, a sleek glass monolith overlooking the city skyline. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting sharp angles across the minimalist decor. Polished chrome desks, abstract art on white walls, and a sprawling view that usually grounded him in his achievements. Today, however, he was distracted during a high-level meeting with his executive team. Charts projected on the screen detailed projections for a new AI defense startup, numbers flashing in vibrant blues and greens. His head of operations, Elena Ramirez, a sharp-witted woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense bob haircut, paused mid-sentence as she noticed his gaze drifting to the window. "Jake, you with us on the Q4 rollout?" Elena asked, her voice cutting through the hum of the projector. The room fell silent, half a dozen suits turning expectant eyes his way. He blinked, refocusing on the slide, but his mind replayed the robbery footage he had glimpsed on his phone earlier. Olive's precise twist, the gun sliding away. "Yeah, sorry. Proceed," he said, forcing a nod. But as Elena resumed, outlining risk assessments, Jake's thoughts wandered back to the gaps in Olive's file. Who vanishes into thin air for years? He tapped his pen absently, the rhythm betraying his preoccupation. Elena shot him another glance, her brow furrowing, but she powered through, wrapping the meeting with assignments. As the team filed out, she lingered, closing the door behind them. "You've been off since that deal closed last week," she observed, leaning against the conference table. "Everything all right? The merger's solid. Markets are responding well." Jake leaned back in his chair, considering how much to share. Elena had been with him since the early days, her loyalty proven in countless crises. "It's not the deal. There was an incident at the Evergreen Pavilion that night. A robbery." Her eyes widened. "You were there. News said it was minor, no casualties." "It was thanks to one person." He hesitated, then added, "A waitress handled it like a pro. Disarmed a guy without breaking a sweat. I've got some questions about her." Elena crossed her arms, a mix of concern and amusement. "And this is distracting you from billion-dollar decisions. Sounds personal." "Maybe it is," he admitted. "Task the private security team. I want a full background on her. Discreetly. Name's Olive Grant, works at the pavilion." She nodded, pulling out her tablet to note it. On it. "But Jake, if it's just curiosity." "It's more than that," he cut in, his tone firm. "He saved lives. I need to know why she's hiding." Elena left without further comment, and Jake turned back to his desk, diving into emails to shake the distraction. But by afternoon, the initial report landed in his secure inbox, compiled by his team's lead investigator, a former FBI agent named Harlan. Jake opened it eagerly, scanning the pages on his dual monitors. The surface information was thin, almost suspiciously so. Olive Grant, born in a small Midwest town, but no birth records corroborated beyond a driver's license issued 3 years ago. Employment history started at the Evergreen Pavilion. Nothing before that. No tax filings predating her hire. No credit history older than the apartment lease. Harlan's notes flagged it. Profile appears constructed. Possible alias. No matches in federal databases for fingerprints or photos. She avoids cameras. Red flags multiplied as Jake delved deeper. No social media presence whatsoever. No Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, not even a forgotten MySpace from adolescence. In a digital age where everyone left crumbs, her anonymity was carefully constructed, like a fortress built to repel intruders. A reverse image search from the restaurant staff photo yielded nothing. She blended into obscurity. Harlan had cross-referenced immigration records, voter rolls, even utility bills. All dead ends before 3 years prior. It was as if Olive Grant had materialized fully formed, stepping into a waitress role with no past to anchor her. Jake's growing fascination bordered on obsession. Who is she really? He paced his office, the city bustling below like a distant hum. In his line of work, anomalies like this signaled opportunity or threat. Was she running from something? Witness protection. Or worse, a plant in some corporate espionage game. The scar on her jaw nagged at him. A clue to violence survived. Grade training, professional execution. Not bar fight luck, but drilled precision, perhaps special forces or private contractor level. He replayed it, noting her stance. Balanced weight, eyes on the threat, no wasted motion. Even her guidance of guests to the kitchen showed tactical acumen, using sight lines and cover. This woman was a ghost with skills that screamed hidden depths. Jake leaned back, rubbing his temples. He could not let it go. Direct approach, then. He arranged a meeting, contacting the restaurant manager under the guise of gratitude. I was impressed by Olive's composure during the incident, he explained over the phone. I'd like to offer her a position at my private foundation, event coordination, crisis management. Competitive salary, benefits. The manager, flustered by the call from a billionaire, promised to relay it. Hours later a response came. She'll meet him but on her terms, next Tuesday 2 p.m. at his corporate building. No foundation pitch. Just a conversation. Jake's anticipation built over the weekend. He prepared questions, scripting them in his mind. Where did you learn that move? Why the thin history? But he knew better than to bombard. She was sharp, would sense interrogation. He reviewed the report again, memorizing details, uncertain what he would discover but driven by the puzzle. Monday flew by in a blur of calls and approvals, his focus sharpening as the meeting neared. On meeting day, Jake waited in his private conference room, a sleek space with a long oak table, ergonomic chairs, and a panoramic view of the skyline. Coffee steamed in mugs, a platter of pastries untouched. He adjusted his tie, glancing at his watch. 1:58 p.m. Punctual, he thought, as the intercom buzzed. Ms. Grant is here, Mr. Cook. Send her in. Olive arrived in professional attire, a simple black blazer over a white blouse, slacks and low heels. Her auburn hair in the same low ponytail, green eyes scanning the room as she entered. The scar along her jaw was faint under the fluorescent lights, but her composed demeanor was unchanged, as if stepping into a lion's den was routine. She closed the door behind her, not waiting for invitation, and took a seat across from him. Before he could speak, she leaned forward slightly, her voice steady. You're not hiring me. You're investigating me. Jake's surprise registered for a split second, a rare crack in his poker face, before he recovered. How did she know? Had she spotted tails from his team? Or intuited from the flimsy cover story? He set down his coffee, meeting her gaze. Perceptive. Most people take the bait. I don't bite easily, she replied, her tone neutral but edged with warning. Tension thickened in the room, two intelligent people sizing each other up, both skilled at reading situations. Jake noted her posture. Relaxed but alert, hands visible on the table, no fidgeting. She mirrored his own techniques from negotiations. Control the space without aggression. The air hummed with unspoken calculations. The city traffic a distant murmur below. He decided on candor. Deflection would insult her. All right, cards on the table. The foundation offer was a way-in. What I saw at the pavilion, that wasn't luck. It was skill. And your background? It's paper thin. 3 years old, no traces before. Who are you really? Olive held his stare, her expression unchanging, but a flicker in her eyes suggested she weighed her response. The conference room felt smaller, the view outside irrelevant as the conversation hung on her next words. Jake's pulse quickened, not from fear but from the thrill of unraveling a mystery. She was no threat, he sensed, but a story waiting to unfold. She exhaled slowly, breaking the silence. You assume everyone has a digital trail to follow. Some of us prefer the shadows. But it was not an answer, merely a parry. Jake pressed gently. Shadows hide reasons. Debt, trouble, or something classified. Her lips curved faintly, not quite a smile. Classified would imply trust. And we just met. She glanced at the pastries, selecting one absently, as if buying time. Jake watched, fascinated by her control. In boardrooms he dismantled egos. Here she matched him step for step. The minutes stretched, conversation weaving through probes and deflections. He shared a bit about his own rise. Orphaned young, bootstrapped through tech hacks to build rapport. She listened, offering nods but little in return. Success like yours attracts enemies, she observed. Maybe you're the one who should be careful. Touché, he conceded. But persistence was his strength. As the clock ticked toward 3 p.m., he circled back. The disarm, where did you learn it? Military. She set down the uneaten pastry. Survival. A single word, laden with implication. Jake leaned in. Survival from what? Help me understand. The tension peaked, her green eyes locking on his with intensity. For the first time a crack appeared. Not fear but resignation. Understanding comes with risks, Mr. Cook. Are you sure you want in? He nodded, committed now. Absolutely. She paused, then began, her voice low. But the full revelation would wait. For now the admission hung. She was not Olive Grant, not entirely. The chapter of investigation had peeled back a layer, revealing more questions beneath. Jake absorbed it, his mind racing. This was no end. It was a beginning. As she rose to leave, promising another meeting, he stood, extending a hand. Thank you for coming. She shook it firmly. Don't thank me yet. Watching her exit, Jake returned to his desk, the report open on his screen. Anomalies multiplied, but so did his resolve. Who she really was, that truth beckoned, a puzzle worth the pursuit. Olive stood at the window, her back to Jake, the city a glittering grid far below. The conference room door clicked shut behind her, but she did not move toward it. Instead, she studied the skyline as if mapping escape routes across rooftops. Jake remained seated, pulse steady, yet every instinct told him the next minutes would redraw the boundaries of his world. He had chased anomalies before. Market shifts, code breaches, hostile takeovers, but this one had walked in on 2 quiet feet and named his game before he spoke. He turned. The scar along her jaw caught the late afternoon light, a pale comma against olive skin. You asked who I really am, she said, voice low, almost conversational. First, decide if you want the answer. Once it's out, it can't go back in the box. Jake leaned forward, elbows on the oak table. I opened the box the night you disarmed a man with a dinner plate in your hand. I'm already inside. A flicker, amusement, maybe respect, crossed her face. She pulled out the chair opposite him, sat, and folded her hands like a witness preparing testimony. My name is Olivia Hartman. Olive Grant is the skin I bought 3 years ago. The name landed with weight. Jake repeated it silently, tasting the difference. Olivia. It fit the precision of her movements, the economy of her words. I was an analyst with Vosk Tech, a private defense contractor based in Brussels, she continued. Recruited out of university for pattern recognition, linguistic cryptography, and field profiling. Within 4 years I ran small teams, mostly off-books intelligence gathering in Eastern Europe and the Caucasus. My cover was cultural attaché. My real brief was psychological warfare and high-value negotiation. Jake's mind catalogued the resume. Elite, expensive, deniable. Vosketek rang a bell. Rumors of black budget contracts, board members who lunched with NATO generals. He had once bid on a Vos subsidiary for drone guidance AI and lost to a consortium out of Singapore. 3 years ago, Olivia said, I audited a data pipeline we called Project Paladin. Officially, it aggregated open-source threat intel. Unofficially, it siphoned classified SIGINT, signals intercepts, satellite tracks, biometric templates, from allied agencies. The buyers weren't governments. They were shell companies nested in the Caymans, routed through Macau, final destination unknown. I traced one payment stream to a holding company called Evergreen Capital. Jake felt the first cold twist in his gut. Evergreen was a silent partner in 2 of his defense startups. Minority stake. Board observer only. But the name sat on his cap table like a quiet spider. I took the evidence to my handler, Olivia went on. Next morning my credentials were revoked, my apartment searched, and Interpol issued a red notice for industrial espionage. Vos claimed I'd sold Paladin to the Chinese. They planted the trail. Bank transfers, encrypted emails, even a burner phone in my gym locker with my fingerprints. I had 48 hours before extraction teams landed. She spoke without drama, the way a pilot recites altitude checks. Jake recognized the cadence. Debrief, not confession. I vanished, she said. Used a dead drop in Prague, cash and a new passport. Crossed into Austria on foot. Then a fishing trawler to Sardinia. From there, freight hops to the States. Olive Grant was born in a copy shop in Tucson. Social security card, driver's license, 1 credit card with a $500 limit. I stayed in cash economies. Motels, diners, seasonal harvest crews. The Evergreen Pavilion was perfect. Remote, transient staff, clientele too self-absorbed to memorize faces. Jake exhaled slowly. And the scar. Reminder from Tbilisi. Negotiation went sideways. Knife versus forearm, knife won. She touched it absently. I kept it. Covers are easier when you don't look flawless. He rubbed a hand across his mouth, buying time. You're saying Vosketek framed you to protect a data theft ring, and the buyers might include my investors. I'm saying the pipeline never shut down. Paladin evolved. Someone is still monetizing allied intelligence, and the profits are too large to let a whistleblower live. Jake's thoughts raced through board minutes, due diligence files, late-night calls with Evergreen reps. Clean paperwork, glowing audits. If Olivia was right, the rot was buried deep. He leaned in. The robbery. You think it was cover? Not random, she confirmed. 3 masked amateurs with handguns don't breach a gated resort on impulse. They wanted noise, panic, a reason to grab one specific waitress in the chaos. When I disarmed the leader, they aborted. Sirens gave them the out. Jake pictured the veranda again. The crash, the screams, the lead robber's wrist folding like paper. Who knew you were there? That's the question I've been asking for 18 months. She reached into her blazer, withdrew a slim flash drive, and set it between them. Encrypted partition. Opens with the phrase, Paladin Echo. Inside are transaction hashes, wallet addresses, and 2 names I've confirmed. One is still breathing. Jake stared at the drive as if it might ignite. And the robbery team. Local muscle hired through a dark web broker in Sofia. Disposable. They won't talk. They don't know who paid them. He picked up the drive, thumb tracing its edge. You've been investigating alone. Safer that way. But I'm tired of running, and you have resources I don't. Her gaze sharpened. Your company is a conduit, Jake. Maybe unwitting, maybe not. Either way, the data flows through servers you fund. Defensive heat rose in his chest. I vet every line of code. My board. Your board has Ethan Ward as head of global security. She let the name hang. Ethan. Former Delta, 20 years in private contracting, recruited by Jake personally after a hostage rescue in Caracas. Ethan sat in on every defense deal, signed every NDA, knew every data center's floor plan. Jake's protest died in his throat. He saw Ethan's easy grin at the last quarterly, the way he always lingered after meetings. Trust was the foundation of his empire. Now it felt like quicksand. Olivia watched the realization settle. Ward joined Vosketech 18 months before I blew the whistle. He ran Paladin's physical extraction teams. If anyone can trace me through facial recog scrapes or resort payroll leaks, it's him. Silence stretched, thick with implication. Outside, clouds slid across the sun, dimming the room to steel gray. Jake set the drive down. You're asking me to turn on my own people. I'm giving you a map. Follow it or burn it. But decide fast, Ward will know we met. He monitors your calendar. Jake stood, pacing to the window. The city sprawled indifferent below. Deals closing, lives intersecting, secrets buried in fiber-optic cables. He thought of the merger he had celebrated the night of the robbery, the billions now potentially stained. He thought of Olivia's steady hands guiding terrified guests through a kitchen door while guns swept the room. He turned back. What do you need? Access. 1 hour inside your primary data center, unsupervised. I can plant a silent crawler, mirror the Paladin packets, and trace the endpoint. After that, you choose lawyers, regulators, or quiet surgery. And if Ward's innocent, then we rule him out and keep hunting. She rose, smoothing her blazer. But he's not. Jake glanced at the flash drive, then at her. The woman who had served him steak with asparagus now offered to dismantle his empire or save it. The irony tasted metallic. One condition, he said. You don't disappear again. If we do this, we finish it together. Olivia considered, then extended her hand. Together. He took it, firm, calloused from work neither waitress nor analyst should have. In that grip he felt the weight of shared risk. She released him and moved to the door. Over her shoulder. Midnight tomorrow. Sublevel 3, Server Farm C. Bring the drive. The door closed. Jake stood alone with the hum of the HVAC and the small black rectangle on the table. Ethan Ward. The name echoed like a misfired round. He pocketed the drive, pulled out his phone, and opened a secure messaging app. Typed a single line to Elena. Clear my calendar tomorrow night. No questions. Then he stared out at the city, the puzzle no longer abstract. Somewhere in the towers below, data moved like blood through hidden veins, and Olivia Hartman, Olive Grant, was the only one who could read the pulse. Jake left the conference room with a flash drive burning a hole in his pocket and Olivia's midnight deadline ticking in his head. The elevator ride to the executive garage felt longer than usual, each floor a chance to second-guess. Ethan Ward had pulled him out of a Caracas safehouse 5 years ago, had stood at his side when hostile investors tried to gut Cook Ventures, had vetted every defense contract that turned Jake's fortune into an empire. Betrayal on this scale felt like discovering gravity had reversed. He slid into the back of his armored SUV, the partition rising with a soft hiss. Home, he told the driver, then opened the encrypted laptop on the seat beside him. The phrase Paladin. Echo unlocked the drive. Files cascaded across the screen. Blockchain ledgers, flight manifests, shell company charters nested like Russian dolls. Olivia had not exaggerated. Every trail led back to Ward. By the time the car purred through the gates of his hillside estate, Jake had memorized the key anomalies. Ward's travel aligned with Paladin data drops in Macau and Liechtenstein. A Cayman entity called Meridian Trust received quarterly wire transfers from Etherius Capital, Jake's own silent partner. The amounts were modest, laundered through consulting fees for risk assessment, but the pattern was surgical. He dismissed the staff early, poured a finger of scotch he did not drink, and waited for the house to go dark. At 11:47 p.m. he slipped out the service entrance, traded the SUV for a nondescript sedan from the secondary garage, and drove downtown to an abandoned textile warehouse Olive had designated as their first safe drop. The building smelled of dust and machine oil. Moonlight striped the concrete through broken skylights. She was already there, perched on a crate, laptop balanced on her knees. A single LED lantern cast a cold circle around her. "You're punctual," she said without looking up. Traffic was light. He handed her the drive. "Walk me through it again. I need to see the threads myself." Olivia spun the laptop so he could read. Ward's Meridian Trust owns a shell in Cyprus that leases hangar space in Sofia. Same city where the Robbery crew was recruited. Coincidence is lazy drafting. She clicked to a satellite image timestamped 3 nights ago. A Gulf Stream registered to Meridian refueling at a private strip outside Plovdiv. Flight plan filed for Teterboro. Landed yesterday. Jake's stomach tightened. Teterboro was 40 minutes from his tower. Ward had been in country for 36 hours and had not mentioned travel. "Financials," she continued, opening a spreadsheet. "Quarterly deposits from Evergreen into Meridian, then disbursed to a Panamanian account that pays Ward's personal Amex Black. The charges are meticulous. Private tailors, vintage watches, a lease on a condo in Miami that isn't in his asset disclosure." She met his eyes. "He's not just skimming. He's curating a lifestyle your board would notice if they looked." Jake rubbed the bridge of his nose. "I approved his expense reports myself. Which is why he buried the excess in subsidiary budgets. You signed off on security hardening for the Singapore data center. Half that money bought server racks in a warehouse outside Prague. Same racks now host Paladin's Mirror." He exhaled through his teeth. "Show me the board." 2 files opened side by side. Director Lila Chen, former Undersecretary of Commerce, golf buddy of Ward's, had received a 7-figure consulting retainer from Meridian the same quarter Cook Ventures acquired her AI ethics startup. Director Marcus Hale, ex-3-star general, sat on the compensation committee that had tripled Ward's bonus structure. Both had signed NDAs with etheric addendums Jake had never seen. Jake felt the ground tilt. Loyalty had been his currency. Now it was counterfeit. "I can bury this," he said quietly. "Call it a rogue employee, excise ward, pay fines, move on. Stock dips, then recovers. I keep the empire." Olivia closed the laptop. "You could. But the pipeline stays live. Tomorrow it's biometric templates. Next year it's launch codes for autonomous kill chains. You decide what your empire is worth." He studied her in the half-light. The woman who had served him asparagus now dissected his life with surgical calm. "You gave up everything," he said. "Career, name, future. Why? Because silence is complicity. I learned that in a safe house in Donetsk when a drone strike killed civilians because someone sold the targeting data." Her voice did not waver, but her knuckles whitened on the laptop edge. "I won't carry that again." Jake nodded slowly. "Then we shut it down. Together." They spent the next hour mapping assets. Jake controlled physical access to every server farm. Olivia understood Paladin's packet structure. He would grant her a maintenance window disguised as a firmware audit. She would seed a polymorphic crawler that phoned home only to a burner server in Reykjavik. They set comms protocol. Signal for text, dead drops for anything larger. Meeting locations rotated through a list of 10 defunct industrial sites. Before dawn they parted. Jake drove home through empty streets, the city asleep while its secrets metastasized. The following week unfolded in coded bursts. Encrypted messages at 3 a.m. A thumb drive left inside a hollowed-out library book on urban planning. A 30-second conversation in the stairwell of a parking garage, breath fogging in the cold. Each exchange peeled back another layer. Ward's network was a hydra. Meridian Trust fed a Liechtenstein Anstalt that owned a Bulgarian security firm whose subcontractors guarded Cook Ventures data centers in Eastern Europe. Lila Chen's ethics startup had quietly patented facial recog algorithms now embedded in Paladin's Mirror. Marcus Hale's nephew ran a logistics company that moved hard drives in diplomatic pouches. The stolen technology was worse than Jake feared. Next-gen persistent surveillance, capable of tagging a face in a crowd, predicting movement vectors, and spoofing geofences. Cook Ventures' legitimate contracts masked the illegal sales. hardware leases to friendly governments bundled with optional analytics suites that were, in fact, Paladin nodes. Billions flowed through Jake's balance sheet without ever touching his conscience. Olivia's expertise filled the gaps. She spoke fluent routing tables, could sketch a kill chain on a napkin, anticipated Ward's counters before he made them. Jake watched her work and felt the stirrings of awe. She had built her new life on caution, yet here she was, risking it again for strangers who would never know her name. Trust grew in small, earned increments. Over terrible coffee in a shuttered diner, she admitted the hardest loss had been her sister, estranged since the disappearance, convinced Olivia was dead or in witness protection. Jake confessed the orphan's fear that everyone close eventually left. Building an empire had been his way of buying permanence. Neither lingered on sentiment, but the words lingered between them like shared oxygen. Danger escalated in parallel. Ward tripled private security at the tower, citing heightened threats. Jake's calendar requests routed through Ward's office now returned with polite denials. A black Suburban began mirroring Jake's commute, always 2 cars back, tinted windows, no plates. One night it accelerated when Jake ran a yellow. He lost it only by cutting through a hotel loading dock and emerging on a service road. He called Olivia from a burner in the hotel lobby. "We're burned." "Expected," she replied, voice calm over the encrypted line. "Ward's running facial recog scrapes on every camera feed you pass. He knows we're talking. We force his hand. The crawler's ready. Seated last night during the audit window. It's phoning home now. We dangle the bait, make him move." Jake gripped the phone. "Define bait." "You announce an emergency board meeting tomorrow night. Agenda: full review of Ethris contracts. You leak it through Chen, she'll panic and call Ward. He'll try to sanitize before the vote. And if he sanitizes with a bullet, then we control the kill box. Pick the venue. You bring the board. We bring the evidence." Jake stared at his reflection in the lobby's polished brass. A man who had once measured risk in basis points now gambling his life. Set it up. The call ended. He stepped back into the night, the city no longer indifferent but watchful. Somewhere in its arteries, Ethan Ward sharpened a blade. Jake straightened his cuffs, the gesture absurdly civilized, and walked toward the storm he had chosen. Jake walked back to his car under the hotel's sodium lights, the night air crisp with the promise of rain. The suspicious Suburban had vanished, but the prickles on his neck lingered. He drove home circuitously, doubling back through residential streets until certain no tail followed. The estate gates closed behind him with a reassuring clank, security cameras winking red in the dark. Inside, he bypassed the scotch this time, opting for black coffee and a secure line to an old contact, Deputy Director Harlan Voss at the FBI's Cyber Division. Not the Voss from Olivia's contractor, coincidence of a common name, but a man Jake had met at a defense symposium years ago, bonds forged over shared disdain for bureaucratic red tape. "Harlan," Jake said when the line connected, "I need a favor. Off books until it's not." The conversation stretched into the small hours. Jake laid out the bones: Paladin's data leaks, Ward's shells, the robbery as extraction. Harlan listened, interjecting with pointed questions that cut to motive and means. By dawn, agents were reviewing the flash drive's contents remotely, cross-referencing with NSA intercepts Jake could not access. Confirmation came swift. Olivia Hartman's story checked out. Red notice still active but flagged as suspect. Vosketech's fingerprints on the frame job were evident in metadata mismatches. Harlan's team wanted in. "We flip her," the deputy director said in a follow-up video call, his face grainy on Jake's encrypted screen. "Testimony for immunity. New identity post-trial witness protection deluxe. She helps us gut Ward's network, we make her whole." Jake relayed it to Olivia via dead drop, an encrypted note in a coffee shop locker. Her response came encrypted: "Deal. But I lead the takedown." Negotiations finalized over the next 48 hours. Federal authorities offered full immunity from any Vosketech fallout, plus a clean slate. New name, relocation stipend, even vocational retraining if she wanted out of shadows. In exchange, she provided detailed schematics of Paladin's architecture, names of mid-level handlers still active, and live testimony against Ward once collared. Jake acted as intermediary, his connections greasing the wheels. Senators on speed dial, a quiet word to the Attorney General's office. By week's end, a joint task force coalesced. FBI Cyber, Homeland Security for the defense angle, even a CIA liaison sniffing around the foreign buyers. The trap concept crystallized in a nondescript motel room on the city's outskirts, blinds drawn against prying eyes. Jake, Olivia, and Harlan's point man, a wiry agent named Reyes, huddled over blueprints. "We recreate the trigger," Olivia said, her finger tracing a floor plan. "The robbery flushed me out once. We stage a sequel. Draw Ward into the open." Reyes nodded. "High visibility, controlled environment. Make him think you're exposed, force a move. Location locked. The Evergreen Pavilion. Same veranda, same lanterns and violins. Symbolic weight pulling Ward like gravity. Jake would invite him under pretense, leverage their strained bond. Ward had grown distant since Jake's subtle probes, cancelled lunches, terse emails about operational silos. The relationship, once ironclad, now cracked with unspoken suspicion. Jake made the call from his office, voice casual over speakerphone. "Ethan, it's been too long. Dinner tomorrow. Evergreen Pavilion, my treat. After the robbery mess, I want your take on overhauling security protocols. Can't trust anyone else with it." Pause on the line long enough to note. "Sure, boss. 8 o'clock work." "Perfect." Ward accepted. Curiosity likely overriding caution. What did Jake know? Why the pavilion? The hook set. Preparation consumed the week. Federal agents positioned surveillance. Microdrones in the gardens, fiber-optic taps on the resort's lines, thermal imagers in the treeline. The veranda wired end-to-end. Button cams in potted plants, directional mics under tables, panic buttons sewn into staff aprons. The manager, read in under NDA, cleared the schedule for a private event. Real guests diverted. Actors filled tables as decoys, briefed on panic cues. Olivia's role, disguised as a server once more, auburn hair darkened to black, contacts turning green eyes hazel, makeup accentuating different angles. She would approach Ward mid-meal, drop a coded phrase to provoke confession, then signal the swarm. Reyes drilled her on contingencies. If Ward bolted, if he came armed, if accomplices shadowed. Jake's anxiety mounted with each passing day. High stakes pressed like a vice. Plan fails, Ward vanishes with Paladin intact. Jake and Olivia become targets in a global hunt. Board members would circle wagons, lawsuits rain down. His empire crumble under scrutiny. Nights blurred into strategy sessions, sleep fractured by what-ifs. He reviewed footage obsessively. Ward's Gulfstream logs, encrypted chats hinting at asset relocation. The web tightened, but so did the noose around his own neck. The night before the operation, Jake and Olivia met in a safe house, a modest cabin in the hills, courtesy of Reyes. Agents patrolled the perimeter discreetly, giving them space. They sat on a worn couch, maps spread on the coffee table, a pot of tea steaming between them. Outside, wind rattled the pines. "This could go sideways," Jake said, staring at the pavilion blueprint. "Ward knows my tells. If he smells the setup." "He won't," Olivia replied, her voice steady. "He's arrogant. Thinks he's untouchable because he's always been the hunter." Jake looked at her, then really looked. The disguise tests had altered her features subtly, but the core remained. That quiet strength, eyes like polished jade even without contacts. "You've done this before. The waiting, the risk. Too many times." She poured tea, steam curling up. "But never with a partner who isn't expendable." The word hung partner. More than allies now. The weeks had forged something deeper. Shared secrets, late-night confessions over bad takeout, the way she anticipated his doubts before he voiced them. "I've never met anyone like you," Jake admitted, setting his cup down. "Strength disguised as stillness. You could have run again, started over somewhere else. Why stay?" Olivia met his gaze, her guarded walls cracking fractionally. "I learned not to let people close. Attachments are leverage. Voss taught me that. But you're different. You could have buried this, protected your world. Instead, you cracked it open. Brief vulnerability surfaced, raw and unbidden. After tomorrow," she said softly. "If we survive, what then? New identity means vanishing again. No ties." Jake reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers. "We rewrite the ending. No vanishing. We build something real out of the ashes. No romantic resolution yet. Survival first." She pulled back gently, but the feelings lingered, acknowledged in the quiet. "Focus on the trap," she said. "Feelings can wait." They parted at dawn, final preparations underway. Communications tested, earpieces synced, code words drilled, asparagus for abort, lantern for engage. Agents ran diagnostics on the wires. Decoys rehearsed their roles. Jake returned home for rest, but sleep evaded him. Instead, he paced the study a few hours, mind replaying Olivia's words. Genuine care had bloomed amid the conspiracy, a fragile thing in a world of shadows. Evening arrived with a chill breeze rustling the resort's gardens. The Evergreen Pavilion glowed as before, lanterns casting warm pools on the veranda. Violins played a subdued melody, decoy guests murmuring scripted conversations. Federal vans idled a mile out, ready to roll. Jake seated himself at the same corner booth as Robbery night, navy suit crisp, a glass of water untouched before him. His earpiece hummed faintly, Reyes confirming positions, Olivia whispering in place from the kitchen. Ward was en route, GPS pinging his approach. The veranda felt like a stage, every shadow a potential threat. Jake's pulse thrummed steady, anxiety tempered by resolve. The trap was set. Now to spring it. The veranda of the Evergreen Pavilion shimmered under the same soft lantern glow that had lit it on the night of the robbery, candles flickering on polished wood tables like distant stars. The violins played a gentle nocturne, their strains weaving through the air, mingling with the faint scent of jasmine from the gardens. Decoy guests conversed in low tones at scattered tables, their laughter measured and scripted, while federal agents blended seamlessly among them, earpieces hidden, eyes vigilant. The setting was a perfect echo of that fateful evening, elegant and serene on the surface, but laced with the undercurrent of impending storm. Jake sat at the corner booth, his navy suit impeccable, fingers drumming lightly on the stem of his water glass. Outwardly calm, he projected the image of a billionaire at ease, but internally his mind raced like a processor overclocked. Every shadow seemed to shift with potential, every clink of crystal a prelude to chaos. He replayed the plan in his head, the coded signals, the positions of Rhea's team, Olivia's approach. Weeks of tension coiled in his chest, a spring ready to release. One wrong word, one premature glance, and the trap could shatter. Ward's arrival was punctual, his silhouette appearing at the entrance like a ghost from the past. He strode across the veranda with his usual confidence, broad shoulders squared in a tailored charcoal suit, his face a mask of affable professionalism. But Jake noted the subtle tells, eyes darting to the corners, a fractional hesitation before sitting. Suspicion simmered beneath the surface, though Ward masked it with a firm handshake. "Boss," Ward said, settling into the chair opposite. "Didn't expect a callback to this place. Bold choice after what went down." Jake forced a wry smile. Figured facing it head-on might help. Trauma's better confronted than avoided. "Wine." Ward nodded, and a decoy server poured a deep red Cabernet. Small talk flowed like the vintage. Surface level, probing without pressure. Ward commented on the improved security. Visible cameras at the gates, reinforced doors. His voice carrying a hint of approval mixed with curiosity. You've beefed things up since the incident. Mart. Those punks got lucky last time. Jake leaned in slightly, steering the conversation with care. That's why I wanted your input. Overhauling the whole system. Protocols, personnel, even third-party audits. You've got the experience. What do you recommend for the data centers? Especially the Eastern Europe sites. Ward's responses were vague, deflections wrapped in expertise. Layered biometrics, AI anomaly detection. But you know that. We've discussed it. He watched Jake closely over the rim of his glass, eyes narrowing fractionally. This about the merger. Or something else chewing at you. The air thickened, the violins shifting to a minor key that mirrored the rising tension. Jake held his gaze steady, but before he could respond, a figure approached from the kitchen doors. Olivia in her server uniform. Crisp white blouse, black skirt, hair darkened and eyes altered, carried a tray with deliberate grace. She set a plate before Ward. Filet mignon, medium rare, asparagus fanned neatly, potatoes golden and crisp. The exact same meal from the robbery night. Steam rising like a memory made manifest. Ward glanced down, fork in hand, then froze. Recognition dawned slowly. His face paling as he looked up at her. The scar on her jaw, even disguised, triggered the connection. His knuckles whitened on the utensil. You remember her, don't you? Jake's voice cut the silence, low and unyielding. Ward's hand moved toward his pocket in a blur, reaching for a concealed weapon or burner phone, but Olivia was faster. With the same fluid motion that had disarmed the robber weeks ago, she twisted his wrist inward, forcing his fingers open. A compact pistol clattered to the floor, skidding under the table. Ward grunted in pain, half rising, but the veranda erupted in controlled motion. Federal agents emerged from their positions. 2 from behind potted ferns, 3 shedding decoy guises at nearby tables, weapons drawn and badges flashing. FBI. Hands where we can see them. Reyes barked, his team surrounding the booth in a tight semicircle. The violins ceased abruptly, the decoy guests freezing in place as planned. Ward slumped back, eyes wide with shock, but resistance flickered. He attempted a bluff, voice steady despite the pallor. What the hell is this? Some kind of joke? I don't know what you think. Save it, Jake interjected, sliding a tablet across the table. On screen, evidence scrolled. Recordings of Ward's encrypted calls, financial documents tracing Meridian Trust's wires, witness testimony from a flipped Voskatech analyst. We've got the pipeline, Ethan. Paladin, the shells, the board buys. It's over. Ward's facade crumbled like dry earth, the realization dawning that every escape route was sealed. Years of deception exposed in pixels and printouts. His shoulders sagged, the confident operative reduced to a man cornered. You don't understand, he muttered, defensive justification spilling out in a rush. It started small, consulting gigs, off-books intel sales. Voss was bleeding money. I fixed it. Then the buyers came, bigger fish. Your company was perfect cover, Jake. Legit contracts hiding the real payloads. I recruited Chen and Hale because they were hungry, easy marks. We leveraged your empire. Data centers as nodes, mergers as smokescreens. Billions, clean and quiet. Olivia stood nearby, her posture alert, green eyes, now hazel, fixed on him. And me? She asked, voice like ice. Ward glanced at her, a flicker of cold pragmatism returning. You were a loose end. That first extraction at the pavilion, supposed to look like a robbery gone wrong. You die in the crossfire, problem solved. Liability eliminated. But you slipped the net, Hartman. Should have stayed gone. Jake's controlled anger simmered to the surface, betrayal sharpening his words. 5 years, Ethan. I trusted you completely. Caracas, the board wars, everything. And you turned my work into a marketplace for death. Ward sneered faintly, the last gasp of defiance. Your work. Idealistic tech for defense. Wake up, boss. It's always been about the highest bidder. I just cut out the middleman. Authorities moved in then, Reyes reading rights in a clipped monotone. You have the right to remain silent. Handcuffs clicked shut on Ward's wrists, the metal cold and final. He was led away past the shocked restaurant staff. Real ones this time, clustered at the doors, his head bowed, footsteps echoing on the wood. Simultaneously, reports crackled over earpieces. Other arrests unfolding across the city. Lila Chen detained at her penthouse. Marcus Hale pulled from a private jet at the airport. Co-conspirators in Sofia and Macau rounded up in coordinated raids. The network, once a hydra, now severed at multiple heads. The aftermath descended like a curtain falling. Federal agents cleared the scene methodically, debriefing decoys and securing evidence. Reyes coordinated with Harlan via radio, the veranda transforming from trap to command post. Statements were taken, timelines reconstructed, the air buzzing with the hum of resolution. For Jake and Olivia, the emotional release came in waves, tension finally breaking after weeks of shadows and secrets. Jake felt the coil in his chest unwind, replaced by a hollow ache, relief mingled with the sting of loss. Olivia exhaled slowly, her disguise shedding as she removed the contacts, green eyes returning to their sharp clarity. As the agents wrapped up, the veranda emptied, lanterns dimming one by one. Reyes gave them a nod. We'll need you both for follow-ups tomorrow, and departed with his team, leaving Jake and Olivia alone at the table. The violins were silent now, the gardens whispering in the breeze. Ward's plate sat untouched, a relic of the confrontation. Jake poured the last of the wine, handing her a glass. It's done. She took it, clinking gently against his. Almost. Trial's testimonies. But the core. Yes. They sat in companionable quiet, the weight of survival settling like dew. The pavilion, once a sanctuary turned battlefield, now felt reclaimed. Jake glanced at her scar, the stories it held, and felt the pull of what lay ahead. Not just justice but possibility. The last federal van rolled down the gravel drive, red taillights swallowed by the dark. Lanterns along the veranda still flickered, their glow softer now that the floodlights were gone. The Evergreen Pavilion had slipped back into its old skin. Polished wood, muted violins, the faint clink of crystal from the kitchen where staff reset for tomorrow. The night smelled of rain-washed jasmine and cooling wax. Only the two of them remained at the corner booth, Ward's untouched steak congealing under a silver dome. Jake exhaled, a sound that carried weeks of coiled tension. It's quiet again. Olivia, leaned back against the leather banquette, letting her shoulders drop for the first time in hours. Quiet is earned tonight. They sat without speaking for a long minute, the kind of silence that follows a detonation. Exhaustion pressed against their ribs, but beneath it ran a bright current of relief, sharp as champagne. Jake broke it first. Prosecution will drag. Grand jury, depositions maybe a year before trial. Longer, she corrected. International subpoenas, sealed evidence. But I'll be on the stand. They can't bury me again. She traced the rim of her water glass. I'm free to be Olivia Hartman in open court. That's a sentence I never thought I'd say. Jake nodded. Cook Ventures will be under a microscope. CC DOJ congressional committees. I'll open every server, every ledger. No redactions. He gave a tired half-smile. Transparency is the new brand. She studied him. You could have lawyered up, spun it as rogue actors, kept the stock price intact. I did the math. Integrity's cheaper in the long run. Weeks dissolved into a controlled burn. Headlines erupted. Billionaire tech mogul uncovers defense data ring. Jake held a single press conference on the tower steps. No podium, no script. Answering every question until the reporters ran out of air. Markets dipped, then steadied. Investors who valued clean books returned first. Restructuring began before the echo of handcuffs faded. New board, independent audits, a whistleblower fund seated with his own shares. Olivia entered witness protection light. Federal safehouse in Alexandria. guarded runs along the Potomac, daily briefings with prosecutors. Contact with Jake was limited to encrypted texts and once-weekly dead drops at a used bookstore in Georgetown. Each message carried weight. A line of code, a memory, a question neither asked aloud yet. Her record was expunged in a sealed hearing. Olivia Hartman, age 31. Analyst, no warrants, no flags. Offers flooded in. Langley wanted her for threat assessment, a Silicon Valley unicorn for red team penetration, even a Scandinavian think tank for ethical AI frameworks. She read them all, then set them aside. Jake's offer arrived on heavy cream stock, handwritten. Head of Security Integrity, Cook Ventures. Autonomous charter. No leash. A. She stared at the card for a long time, thumb worrying the embossed letters. 4 months later they met at a corner table in a DuPont Circle cafe. Windows fogged from October rain. No disguises, no earpieces. Olivia wore a charcoal sweater, hair back to its natural auburn. Jake had traded bespoke suits for a navy peacoat and jeans. Steam curled from their cups. Trial date set, she said. Ward flipped on the board. Hale's pleading. Chen's fighting. Stocks up 12% since the audit, he countered. Funny how sunlight disinfects. They laughed, the sound small and surprised, as if laughter were a muscle neither had used in years. Conversation drifted to the robbery, the night that rewrote both their maps. Jake set his cup down. I noticed you before the crash. The way you moved, economical, aware. I thought, that woman's running her own system. Olivia's eyes softened. I clocked you the second you walked in. Solitary, scanning angles, no phone in hand. Most billionaires broadcast. You observed. A pause, the rain ticking against the glass. I thought I was hiding, she said. 3 years of it. But you saw through the uniform before the masks ever came off. Jake lifted his coffee in a small salute. You were never hiding. You were surviving. She clinked her cup against his. Sometimes surviving is its own kind of victory. Outside, the downpour eased to a drizzle. They paid the check and stepped onto the wet sidewalk. Umbrellas unnecessary. The city smelled of wet leaves and possibility. Neither spoke of futures in absolutes. No declarations, no timelines. Professional alignment was certain. Personal territory would be explored at the pace trust allowed. They walked side by side, equals partners. Behind them the cafe door chimed shut. Ahead, traffic lights blurred into streaks of red and green, a new grid to navigate together. From a terrifying night of shattered glass and drawn guns had come transformed lives. The waitress who stayed calm when panic ruled had peeled back layers of power and privilege to reveal rot beneath. In the end, her composure under pressure exposed the real threat and against every odd saved them both.